Please.
Morena, and welcome to our council meeting, and welcome to our team in our people in the gallery and also on Zoom. And our Deputy Mayor is joining us by Zoom today. And so with that, I'm going to get straight into the meeting. And to open our meeting, a very warm welcome to Tony. Come and join us at the table. Tony will explain a little bit about himself, but at the moment he's the vicar at St John's Anglican Church while Sarah is recovering. And so very warm welcome to our community.
Kia ora, morena, your worship, Mayor and councillors. It's a great privilege for me to be here. I have lived in the Fielding area since the middle of September last year. Prior to that, I was a vicar in Geraldine in South Canterbury. And prior to that, I was everywhere, man. I was served in the army for a long time and then moved to Christchurch and did a whole bunch of different things, including driving trucks and cranes. So it's been an interesting journey. As Mayor Helen has said, I'm here temporarily filling in for Sarah until such time as a permanent replacement is found. And in that capacity, it was my great privilege last week to help out in blessing the Makino pool with Anadu from the local marae. It's a great privilege for us to be able to do that sort of thing. It can be a very troubling set of circumstances in a workplace, and to be able to release that place and bring a healthy spirit back into the workplace is always one of the things we do, and it's one of the things I'm privileged to be a part of. In terms of things that are going on for our community, this is the busiest week of the year for us. It won't come as any surprise. This is called Holy Week in our church community, but leading up to Easter is a very busy time. And so you've got things going on like the Easter camp at Manfield Park. There's a whole series of events tomorrow and over the weekend, including services at various churches on Easter Day. So if you see lots of funny people or strange people or Christians, all of the above, in your town, you'll know what it is they're doing. And including there'll be a walk from the lookout back into town tomorrow morning, starting at about 8:45. Shall we begin with prayer? A loving God, we give you thanks and praise that this council have brought themselves to your feet at this time of the year. Father, we ask you to watch over their business. Watch over each councillor as they open their minds and their hearts to do your work here in this place. Father, we surrender ourselves to you, individually, corporately, within your creation. And we ask your guidance on all that is said and done here in this place today. Father, in summary, let's pray the prayer that you taught us. Kia tō mātou matu I te rangi, kia tapu tō ingoa, kia tai mai tō rangatiratanga, kia mea te tāwe pai ai ki runga ki te whenua. Ho mai kia mātou e nei he tāro ma mātou mo tēnei rā. Murua o mātou hara. Me mātou hoki e muru nei I o te hunga I harana ki a mātou. All these things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you very much, Tony. Thank you. And I wish you all the best for the weekend's festivities and celebrations and remembering and reflecting. And to you and your community, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Right, we go through to apologies. Have an apology from our Chief Executive, Shane, who's on leave, and welcome Hamish Waugh, Acting CE today. Requests for leave of absence, we have none, so we can go straight to item 4, which is the confirmation of minutes. We're on page 6. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Ford.
Your Worship, I move that the minutes of the council meeting held 16th of March 2023 be adopted as a true and correct record.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Underwood, thank you. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 5, declaration of interest. Any of the topics on today's agenda? Councillor Short.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to declare an interest in 11.1 Opawi Road on the agenda today. It's quite likely this might end in a hearing of which I would be part of. So when this item is up for discussion, I will actually leave the room.
Thank you, Councillor Short. Councillor Bell.
Your Worship, I would like to declare I don't have a conflict of interest, but I have an interest in the workshop today on the second item when Te Reo Valley come in. I have been working with the owners in a working party as an independent based on the whānau request. So I just want to declare that, and I will be staying in the room and engaging the mihi kia koutou.
Thank you. Councillor McFadyen.
I also like to disclose a conflict of interest or interest as the chairman of the Stanway Alcohol Water Scheme regarding the workshop this afternoon, and would be intending to stay in the room as a representative of the committee.
Thank you. Right, those are noted. Thank you for that. Right, going through our agenda, we have no public forum, presentations or notification of late items, so we can go straight to page 14. Recommendations from committees. We have the quarterly performance report from the Audit and Risk Committee to the 31st of December, and I'm going to ask Councillor Campbell, as the Chair of Audit and Risk, if you could just point out any highlights.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. Yeah, the report is there in the papers. I'm pleased to report that virtually all of the KPIs and financial operating targets are on target and compared to our budgets at the beginning of the year, with the exception of our capital expenditure program, which traditionally is always behind where we expect to be, but this year it's well behind for a number of reasons. One, it's the biggest capital expenditure program we've had for we've ever had. But there's a number of factors, including, I suppose, weather, labour requirements, budget extensions. Mr. Ward may wish to add comments there. But other than that, in my opinion, the financial performance of the council for the first half of this financial year has been satisfactory.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions or comments in regards to that report? Hamish, is there anything you want to add to Councillor Campbell's comments around capital projects?
Thank you, Your Worship. Not specifically, other than Councillor Campbell mentioned the weather events that we've had, which has taken a fair hit on not just the projects that we've been doing in terms of timeframes and delays, but also the market that we're working within and the contractor availability. So that does have a knock-on effect. But it's worth noting that there are significant commitments in place, and I'll note the likes of Turner's Road, which has been on the books for many years, and we're now well underway with that. So yeah, big program, and the team are progressing as much as they possibly can. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Quarry.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The shall we say restoration of work in regard to the sewage from Rangitia. When can we expect that to pick up?
I don't have the utilities team for a specific project update, but we've had essentially three parts to that piece of work. One was the laying of the main pipe, which is through from the Mount or the Stewart Road, Arahuri Road intersection through to Rangitia. Second stage of the pipe is through the township of Rangitia, and then the third part is the pump station work. So that's a part of a program of works over this financial year and next. I'm not sure, top of my head, when the next stage of pipe work will be commencing. I can certainly confirm that with the projects team and come back, but the pump stations will be in the next financial year.
The work to date, everyone's been quite happy. There's quite an amount of local comment in regard to it. Everyone has seen the pipes arrive in Rangitia. There's a great stack of pipes that are positioned in Rangitia, but they've been sitting there staring at the sunlight for some time.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting too, through you, Worship, if Councillor Corey recalls, we sliced up part of that contract in the earlier days to get the best value for the ratepayer, and so we actually bought a lot of that pipe directly from the supplier or from the manufacturer, and then the contract with the contractor is to install it. So it's not uncommon that we would have a stockpile of materials there waiting, because we have bought those and locked in some earlier prices, which gave us a good outcome financially. So.
Thank you. Councillor Belsky, did you have your hand? No, good. If there's no further comment, there is a motion on page 14. If I could have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Hadfield.
Councillor Stewart's already moved.
Oh, thank you.
No.
No? So if you'd like to move, and maybe Councillor Campbell can second that.
Happy to move that the council receives a quarterly performance report, treasury report.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell seconded. I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. We now go to item 10. We're on page 47. This is for your information only. This is the minutes from the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on the 9th of March. Councillor Campbell, is there anything in there you wish to highlight?
Not really. This was the first meeting of the committee for this triennium. As a result, it was quite busy, but the minutes are there. So I'm happy to leave those as read.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? No? Again, we have, they're for your information only, so we'll move on. So we now go to item 11. This is in the officer's report. We're on page 51, Opawi Road. And this morning, want to welcome our legal advisor from CR Law, Shannon. If you'd like to come and join us at the table. And this is to update council following the objections on the proposed road stopping. For returning councillors, you will know this has been an ongoing topic of discussion and mediation for some time. And today there is a recommendation being put to council, and Shannon and her team were invited to come and explain to us from a legal perspective about why this is so. So welcome, and I'll hand it over to you.
Morena Koto, Shannon Johnston from CR Law, and I'm with me today is Mr. Ryan O'Leary from the property group, who has been processing the road stopping proposal on behalf of council. And part of the papers that you will have before you include a recommendation report from Mr. O'Leary. I'm here to assist you understand where we've got to with the road stopping proposal of the unformed or part of unformed road, Opawi Road, and Wendy Thompson, and who is the council officer within council, unable to be here today. So I speak with her permission and blessing as well. But essentially, this report before you provides an update on the road stopping proposal. It involves part of unformed road, Opawi Road in Pahongana, and that road traverses private land and takes you or the pedestrian traversing the road through to the Ruahine Forest Park. Since 2007, there have been a range of issues with use of particularly the front portion of the unformed road. Council has been involved in various discussions over the years with a range of parties, including the landowner, about securing alternative access to the forest park. There have been a range of issues, some contentious, and that have resulted in proceedings. And this proposal, which was notified in 2022, looked to put in place a solution to those issues and provide alternative access over another part of the private land. Following notification, there were a number of submissions, and Mr. O'Leary can speak to his report today or answer questions, but essentially 61 submissions in response to the proposal, which this council agreed to notify via a resolution in April 2021. The recommendations following review of the submissions, and we can talk to the issues shortly, but I just want to put it before you, is that the recommendation is that the proposal not proceed further at this stage, because there have been some issues raised with how the alternative access is going to be provided to the forest park. The access was going to be provided, or is proposed to be provided, via an easement. So the unformed road that was going to be closed, the portion of it, was going to be replaced by an easement over land. Submitters have raised concerns around the longevity of that access as it's secured via easement, and whether or not the legal right that is transferred under an easement is similar enough or aligned or akin to the legal right that's provided via an unformed road. Where we've got to is that the issues raised, Mr. O'Leary's recommendation is that there are a number of alternatives that could be explored to address those particular concerns in a way that would see an alternative proposal come to council and then form the basis of a new road stopping proposal. And the recommendation of council officers is that that is taken up by this council, and that the current proposal is not furthered, and that this council direct council officers to work with submitters and investigate options that address some of the concerns raised around how the alternative access is being provided. I want to reiterate that council officers wish to continue to provide enduring public access to the forest park, and that was certainly a wish of this council as well, or predecessors, and that is the focus of future proposals and investigations, and that would resolve a number of the submitters' concerns. And so that is the basis of the paper before you, which is essentially that this current proposal not proceed further, and that council officers are directed to do some further work as to how alternative access could be provided to the Ruahine Forest Park without, I guess, we'll still close the front portion of the unformed road, but provide that access in a different way.
Thank you.
Do you have any further comments?
I think that's well covered. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you. So if you've got no further comment, Mr. O'Leary, let's open it up for questions, comments based on the papers and the information we've had this morning. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thank you, Shannon, for your presentation. This has obviously been around for a long, long time, work going back to 2007. So there's 15 years of work here. I hate to think what council spent in terms of cost on this, and we've got absolutely nowhere. The recommendation that is before us is basically saying, we'll scrap the whole thing. We'll go back to square one. No change from 15 years ago. Seems an unfortunate bit of waste of time and money. But the point is, if we haven't been able to find a solution between all parties over that time, that's our only option. And maybe the thing should just be put in the bin and we don't look at it again. I'm interested in your thoughts on that. And if there is a potential solution that might be able to be found between the parties. And I'm also interested well, no, I'll go back. When we first passed the resolution, and we're looking to rescind now, my thoughts at the time were that the easement provided a satisfactory access to the park and a solution to the problem. I'm not fully understanding why that easement is not satisfactory to the hunters. So maybe you could just enlighten us a little bit more on that.
Yeah, thank you, councillor. And I do want to recognise that this has been a long-standing matter for council, but I would reiterate that I don't feel that we have not made progress. So there is now a general consensus that the alternative alignment that's been identified over the farm is a good alignment. So the issues that have been raised now are no longer about how, or no, not how, where the access is going to be provided. It's around the legal mechanism that delivers it. And the concerns that have been raised are that an easement doesn't confer the same sort of legal interest. So that some of the submissions raise questions around the ability for council to exit the easement arrangement, for example, whereas under the Unformed Road provisions of the Local Government 74 Act, you have to go through a statutory process. So that's an example, a different type of legal interest. And while the easement was progressed and validly so, those issues have been raised, and there are opportunities to address it in a different way through different types of processes, through looking at roading options. There are a range of options that could be explored, all of which take time, not necessarily a huge amount of cost, but officer time and consultation and engagement. And that process seems worthwhile. And certainly the recommendations of Mr. O'Leary, having spoken to a number of the submitters, feel that that would enable that process to be able to be run more smoothly in a more consensual, consensus-based way, if those conversations could be had. So I feel progress has been made, but it hasn't quite been as smooth sailing as we would have anticipated originally. The merits of the need to still address this issue remain, in my view.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ford.
Thank you. I'm in a similar camp to Councillor Campbell, that I find it surprising that while I support the recommendation today, I'm surprised that we haven't got a replacement recommendation ready to go. There's been plenty of time to have formulated such a recommendation, in my opinion. Either that, or I'm completely missing the plot.
Thank you, Councillor. There is work underway, and council officers have been exploring options post the submissions being received, and that's informed in part this recommendation. However, those considerations should occur outside the current Unformed Road stopping process to enable those to be explored in a transparent and open way with the public, this council, and current submitters if they wish to remain involved. It becomes complicated to try and address alternatives within a current proposal, as opposed to look to them fresh outside the current statutory process, which is one of the reasons why, importantly, the recommendations are that after you make a decision, should you wish to not proceed, that the council officers are directed to undertake those investigations so that momentum can be maintained.
Thank you. Any Councillor Belsky?
Yeah, thank you for addressing us today on this situation. Is it like the easement we thought was fairly straightforward, because there's one at the end of Table Flat that goes into the Rohinis, and there's sort of no hassles there really with closure, or there is with dogs, but are they wanting to take vehicle like a motorbike from the road, the form road, to the bush edge? And is it possible through this new route to do that? Because they were talking about your proposal of the easement was 10 metres wide, where a paper road's 20 metres. I saw that in the report. But is there a stumbling block with vehicle access to the reserve, to the bush edge, that the landowner is not happy about?
The submissions raised a number of issues around the terms of the easement as well, which is what you've identified, Councillor. The recommendations today to bring forward the proposal to not proceed with this option really is focused on the legal mechanism of delivery of the alternative access, as opposed to some of those issues. There have been suggestions that vehicular access would be appropriate. The position of council has always been that this is a pedestrian use. Predominantly, this has been used for pedestrian access, and vehicle access over parts of that road appears on its face and subject to roading advice previously not available presently. But those are issues that would need to be explored through the next proposal. Certainly not something that we were looking to change at this time.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. So we have in front of us a number of recommendations there for council to table and see where we get to. So can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for those recommendations? And we're on page 51. Councillor Blackmore.
I have another question.
Thank you. Sure.
What I'm unclear about, I'm a new councillor, so I don't know the history here, besides what's in front of me. What I'm unclear about is what the impact on the landowner would be supporting this, your recommendations today, and what the nature of the issues driving this change actually are. So can you comment on those?
The landowner is aware of these recommendations today, and he's aware that council officers will continue to work with him about providing alternative access over the land. The landowner made a submission on this proposal. The submission was really clear that his purpose is also to continue to provide enduring access to Ruahine Forest Park. So council and the landowner are aligned on that, and I think that that's an important point for the public and this council to be aware of. The issues that the landowner has experienced relate predominantly to the vicinity of his house and buildings to the front portion of the unformed road. And that front portion also crosses a working farm. Well, the entire road crosses, that part of the road crosses a working farm, but at the front part, it's a lambing paddock. So a critical part of the farming operation. So those from a practical perspective, some of the challenges that the landowner has experienced. And then over the years, I think it's been well documented that there have been issues with access at times with some members of the public, and there have been some difficulties. And council has been involved with that, given their role as the overseer of the unformed road. And it really got to a point, I think we could say, that council wanted to be able to put an enduring solution in for all parties, including itself, to be able to provide access, provide the landowner with some certainty for his farm operations, but also to provide for the community the ability to access that important recreational resource.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, just a quick question, Your Worship. And that is, what part of a legal easement doesn't actually allow access?
Sorry, councillor, you might have to repeat that.
What part of a legal easement, which has been one of the solutions being proffered, what part of a legal easement doesn't allow access? Because that appears to be the point that some of the objectors are making, that they uncertain that a legal easement is actually a legal easement. So that's enough to get me confused.
Yeah, and I think we have to be mindful of the fact that we're not responding to individual submissions through this process today. But what I would say is that understanding of how a legal easement works isn't something that lay people necessarily understand immediately, but it does confer a right of access. It absolutely does. And this particular easement that was proposed provided an access right in perpetuity. However, the comparison was made between that legal interest and a road, an interest in a road, and the different mechanisms that sit over that and protect those interests. And at law, that is accurate. Whether or not the access was provided in a way that it could be maintained in a sensible and productive way, that's another issue, because the easement terms did deliver it. However, there is enough in the submissions raised today and alternatives available to this council that council officers are exploring that would enable potentially a mutually beneficial outcome that presented itself in a smoother statutory process to get to that outcome as well, that this council's been encouraged to take up.
Councillor Campbell.
I'm happy to support your professional advice, Shannon. But I note one of the recommendations is that council investigates different options and we haven't really covered off what those different options might be. And I don't know if you're prepared to discuss those now or not, but it seems to me that we've explored fairly fully the the options to date, one being an easement or to me, maybe the only other option is to shift the legal road, and I don't want what the implications of that, or if that's possible or not, and what the cost and implications of that might be. But I suspect it would take years to achieve. Maybe just a final comment on that.
Yeah, well, there are a number of options, councillor, that have been explored. I don't have instructions to proceed with any of them because they're going to be tested with you and with council officers further, and also the community. But alongside an easement, there are options that have actually been identified through the submissions themselves. There's a Walking Access Act option. There's rerouting the unformed road, as you've mentioned. There's also different ways to stop roads and provide for road under different types of statutory processes, Public Works Act, a mixture of Public Works Act, exchange and acquisition. There are different ways of delivering the access, I guess what I'm saying. And we feel that there are a number of options that could be explored that would provide a more mutually acceptable outcome. And I think we need to think about what would have happened if you did proceed. Those 61 objections go to the Environment Court. It's a contentious process that could be avoided if the council takes stock and does some further work and looks to continue with its intent to provide alternative access, but in a way that potentially resolves maybe not all, but a significant number of the concerns.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a good answer. Thank you. So with that, I'd be happy to move then the recommendation if there's no other questions.
Thank you. So we have a mover for those recommendations as set out there, the 4 recommendations. Do we have a seconder for those? Councillor McFadyen. Thank you. Any further discussion? Right, I'll put those motions. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you for coming today and putting it in simple language. I guess you can hear the frustration that why has it taken 15 years to get to this point, and why hadn't those alternatives been considered to date? But we are where we are. And so we have supported the need to look at alternatives. So thank you for your time here today to both of you.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so with that, we will move to item 11.2. We're on page 68, and it's great to welcome the team from Awahuri Forest Kitchener Park Trust. This is their 6-month report to the 31st of December. So welcome, Bessie and Jill. Thank you. And then just before we start, Jill, our condolences on your loss and to our community's loss. And just to let you know that at our last council meeting, we had a moment's silence to respect Kevin's passing. Absolutely. So we're here today to receive your 6-month report. We have that in front of us. Take it as read, and you're welcome to put out any highlights. Yes, then we can hear you better.
Right, okay, is that better?
Thank you.
Can't tell whether it's on or off. Just to speak to the report, just to bring you up to date. Point 1, in the last few weeks, Bruce Kerryama has resigned as the leader of Jobs for Nature, and therefore his position as advisory trustee is also a resignation because he represented them. Going down point 2, 2.3, 2.2, 2.1, the funding. MPI have extended our grant coverage because, well, they haven't extended the grant, but they've extended how long we can take to use it because of COVID, and various flooding opportunities have, ruined our planting. So that's really good. They've also taken a great interest in the park and the future of the park. So Bessie might talk to that a bit further on. Moving on to 3, infrastructure. We had our blessing event a few years ago. Thank you, Worship, for attending, and Councillor Ford. It was a lovely occasion, much more emotional than some of us thought it might be, but it was really wonderful. And we look forward to developing that wetland with the Jobs for Nature team. The West Side Boardwalk, as you know, that was plagued with vandalism to begin with. That's all been finished. It's really beautiful. It's revealed some beautiful oxbow lakes. And we're in the moment negotiating with Medshed to build some seats for that boardwalk. Point 5, the environment. Building a new maintenance access track because the stream is eroding the track around the park rapidly, and there's not really much we can do about that. We're looking at putting in a construction that is something called J-Car.
It's,
Yes.
it's a product out by
It's a
a company called J-Car.
Yes, and it's filled, it's weatherproof. It can flood and it won't be washed away.
It's permeable, can go up and down, and water can go through it and over it. So we don't actually have a structure or anything there. It kind of integrates into the land but holds it.
So that's, we've been discussing that with council officers, obviously. It won't involve cutting down any trees. It's through a place where it's more or less a wasteland. It's been flooded and pretty much ruined. So that will enable us to plant all those areas on the west side. Phragmites research is going well, except we still can't really find a solution to it. Aaron Madden is now working for Recreation Services, and he's been doing a lot of work writing up the reports, the highly academic reports, which are going to MPI, the scientists there. And hopefully one stage we'll be able to get it listed as a toxic weed. But Bessie and Aaron did visit a property in Rata Street where the Phragmites has lifted concrete around the house and has actually grown through the house. Now, there's nothing we can do about that. The lady has to deal with her insurance company, but just to say that that plant is going to cause huge destruction along the stream if it isn't got under control. We have been looking at the future of the park because obviously it's under review. The trust is under review along with Mount Lees. And we were a little disappointed to see that we can't appoint any more trustees at the moment because we actually had found 3 at last who were high caliber business people with good governance skills. And so we had to say to them that that's on a pause. We don't see the park as a tourist attraction, but we do recognise that the council is looking at Mount Lees and the possibilities of income from these properties, perhaps. And we sat down with Michael Hawker for a good 2 hours and had a good discussion about the trust and what we do, and you will receive that report shortly. Right. And we're very interested to see what he say. He wrote pages and pages of notes. And so with all the research that we've done recently, we have come up with some good ideas that do have commercial possibilities for the park and for the council. And I'll ask Bessie to talk to those.
Oh, no, I'm not going to talk to those today, but
right,
I will.
You can talk to them.
I will. There is some things that I do think need to be raised.
Can you just pop your microphone in front of you so that people on Zoom can hear?
I won't talk to those today, but there are some things that I do think need to be raised that the council be aware of. The first one is we've moved a fair distance down the track for planning the development of the wetland. And we've got a timeline that it was in place that we would have permitted stuff through this winter and into spring. We would have started some of the earthworks and things with horizons, and by this time next year we would have been into our first wave of planting and seed bombing. Unfortunately, as I've worked through the finances of this, and it relates to the very first report about the risk, the financial risk is in here, I look at the funding that we have, and it is very, very clear the funding we have is around assets, and yet most of the work we are doing cannot be classified as creating a formal asset. Like, we can't value our trees. If you put a piece of concrete in, you can say you put in an asset. But if you're actually working through a dip and you're opening up an old channel in the soil where you can run water through and create a reservoir, and it's only about that deep, it cannot be classified as an asset. It actually becomes a kind of landscaping, and it's really an operational cost. So we've struck I guess a conundrum of where I thought we had funding under the LTP for us to carry a lot of this work out. And I can't even raise and leverage against it. I've raised this with Carl, and it's only just kind of sunk into my head in the last, like 2 or 3 weeks. It's not something that's been sitting there. So I just wanted the council, whom I know have been very supportive to us around this, to understand if we do have to delay this a year, it's not because you've got a problem around your accounting process. This is just accounting in general. What is an asset and what's operational? And you're bound by them. We're bound by them. And so we've got just a bit of a dilemma to sort out. So that may impinge on the development. I think people should know.
Mm. Thank you.
Jill mentioned the MPI. I wasn't going to mention that. We've just had our halfway through the 3-year contract review, and it was 6 hours of looking at the paperwork, the figures, the whatever else. It was due to complete at the end of January. We've got surplus. They are very keen for us to extend and use all the funding and to take it through till June 24. Now, the condition was that we actually write a case study. They are very impressed with how the trust have used this money, the value streams, and the fact that we can actually show a lot of the interweaving of the science and the value structures within this development. And I'm quite proud of that.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for those highlights. Now let's open it up for questions, comments, please, from the team. Councillor Short.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask what progress you're making with the Phragmites. I know Erin's looking on at solutions. Actually, I happened to, with the Orua Catchment Care Group, had to go to the Rata Street end of the walkway and talk with recreational services, and quite by chance, Bond Contracting was there, and we had a bit of a discussion about the Phragmites and how in the meantime it's being left while a solution is found. And I heard the story about growing up through the house. And also, was it 3 layers of silage wrap and it still grows up this much underneath? So it's a nasty little critter.
Where we've got to with the Phragmites is we have 2 potential methodologies that were in our small plots. We've run 23 plots over the last 2 years. Aaron came on board, and I guess we were crude in what we were doing. We're not scientists. We were just doing what we could. He's pulled all that in together under the care of one of the MPI scientists who's sort of overviewing our research with us, and we've got 3 or 4 other scientist moderators around us there. We've got 2 potential methodologies. Unfortunately, to implement them is incredibly difficult and labour intensive. And so our first scale-up trials are actually occurring at the end of this month, where we'll have a team of J for N guys out working with Aaron on some patches where we will be assessing equipment, whether human beings, how long they could actually do this, because it's all going to have to be done manually at this stage for that particular way of methodology. And it's until we can find something that we can then take into, you know, a more general methodology that's more practical. But we have to test this first. We have to look at that, and maybe from that we can develop specialist equipment or something. We don't know yet. It's kind of.
Thank you. Yeah, we hear the challenge there. Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Tēnā korua, nau mai haere mai ki tō tānei whare. Tūkana mihi ki a koe, Jill. Just a part, I've got a question for, I see in the report that there's been a little bit of vandalism on the side of the boardwalk. Has there been any thoughts of having discussions with FDP? I know that they're in the process of putting in CCTV footage. Is there any sort of thoughts around how we can ensure?
We've actually put cameras in at the end of last year, and we've also in the process we've just received quotes and things about 2 weeks ago where we've got additional cameras going in. And you're right, we've had 6 incidents of vandalism just in the first quarter of this year, some significant, some not.
Since the cameras have been put in, have you noticed that it's lessened? Or
yeah, but we need to extend the cameras so that we can get some better angles. So we put in one, we need to put a second one in, and that's what we're doing right now.
I'd like to say that we would need to have cameras everywhere in the park. Recently, 6 quite large trees were just simply pulled out by the roots and left. Now, why you'd walk through a park and then pull the trees out, hopefully we can save them, but it's doubtful. So, you know, that's the sort of thing, you can't have a camera along every single spot in the boardwalk because vandalism doesn't just occur in the car park where we've got cameras. I mean, there was a gentleman who was shooting bows and arrows, and Dennis Emery stopped him. Thank goodness, saw it. But this is the sort of thing, you know, we can't be eyes on over the whole 11 hectares. It's vandalism to the trees, which is our main problem at the moment, probably.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have a recommendation on page 68. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to receive this report? Councillor Blackmore.
I move that the council receive the Awahuri Forest Kitchener Park Trust's 6-month report for the period ending 31st December 2022.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Short. No further discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your effort and the work that you're doing on behalf of the community. And if you could extend our thanks to the rest of the team. Cheers. Thank you. Take care. Right, item 11.3, we're on page 74, and it's good to welcome back the team from CEDA. Come and join us at the table. Welcome to Bobby and Jerry and Jackie. Thank you. This is presenting your 6-monthly report to the 31st of December. So we have that report. We'll take it as read and hand it over to you for any highlights.
Good morning, Mayor Helen, thank you, and councillors. It's nice to be here again, and especially welcome to the newer councillors. So I guess that there may be some questions as you get used to us and actually what we do. Look, we always appreciate the opportunity to attend here and to present our half-yearly report and, of course, our 2023-24 Statement of Intent. Look, the half-yearly report is provided in the context of New Zealand and the region that we're actually moving into, and the challenging economic landscape that we're all aware is happening at the moment. There's a significant increases in costs of living. And I notice with the, interest rates are going up again as per yesterday. And, we're well aware of the impacts that's going to have on the people within our community. Despite this, the provisional GDP for the Manawatu for our year ending December 22 was actually up 2.7%, which, our region is coping well, despite some individual players who hurt within that. Look, CEDA has continued to deliver on the key pillars of our people, place and business, and our activities are anchored around those projects, such as the Central New Zealand Distribution Hub, or Te Tutanganui, progressing on the Manawatu food strategy and the destination management and development and business support. So they're our main pillars, and that's what our structure is around and what we're delivering on. The 2023 draft statement of intent reflects the continued focus on these core work streams and informed by a clear intervention logic to guide where we spend and a change in how we reflect our performance with a more quantitative feel to our performance measures. The region is well positioned to cope with the short-term economic outlook and with the region's unique mix of industries, which we do have. And I mean, our region is very unique. And we'll continue to support the economic activity for our 23-24. Look, I'm going to pass over to Jerry and Janet. They're the ones that actually do, Jackie, sorry, Jackie. Jerry and Jackie, they're the ones that do the work and just sort of got their fingers very much on the pulse. So Jerry, hand over to you.
Thanks, Bobby. Kia ora, everybody, and welcome particularly to the new councillors who we haven't seen before. It's I know I've seen some of you around at different events. Hello again. So look, I just want to comment briefly on the highlights for the half-yearly report, but then sort of focus on the statement of intent draft, because I think that's really, really important that we get some input onto that. So look, some highlights for us over the last 6 months up until December. So firstly was the completion of the destination management plan refresh, which I think has been a fantastic piece of work and will deliver great outcomes for the region. We've had 34 media profiles in the region along with the launch of the Coastal Arts Trail and the very successful Manawatu version 2.0 campaign. 12 successfully supported events through the Regional Events Fund, successful in being recontracted to deliver the Regional Business Partnership Program that you might recall when we presented our Statement of Intent last year hadn't been confirmed. Overall, we've supported 265 small businesses around things like the Regional Business Partnership Program, Business Mentors New Zealand, visitor sector support, our talent and skills, industry support, and have awarded about $84,000 in capability funding. We've got a forecast year-end position of currently of $149,000 surplus, and that's because of things like not having to deliver the food talks last year. Like any organisation around the region in New Zealand, we suffer from the same staff shortage, pressures that everybody else experiences. So we've carried a few vacancies this year, but we continue to make sure that we deliver using our intervention logic, key programs of work and outcomes as detailed in the statement of intent that's current. Now to the 2023-24 draft statement of intent that you've got in the papers today as well. We always appreciate having the clear guidance through the statement of expectation from our shareholders around what they see as being critical. And we're focusing on making sure we deliver those, and that's been expressed, we think, in this draft statement of intent. We focus to make sure that we will deliver on the expectations of both of our two shareholder councils. A vision is to work on those areas of focus that create the best outcomes for the region, the big impact projects that are actually going to bring change. And we continue to focus on what we do and do it well, and also take on board that we need to do things in partnership so we're not duplicating effort with other agencies. So our key pillar projects continue to be Te Tutanganui, the Central New Zealand Distribution Hub, the Manawatu food strategy. Indeed, I had a conversation with a local person in that space this morning at 7 a.m, which is really cool. We continue to support regional business through a number of activities, including our business traction work, our retention and expansion desires, building the talent and skills pipeline, and of course the visitor sector and the Regional Business Partnership Program being enacted. Finally, our domestic visitation through the Destination Management Plan and development of those key outcomes for the regional tourism function we do is important, and we're working with partners to make sure that that key sector development continues. We're also very acutely aware of the key outcomes for the region inside the statement of expectation, promotion and development of the key tourism and visitor sectors, including the country road tourism route, stimulation of investment for the district, promoting Manfield, delivering on the regional identity, and finally identifying activities that help resolve labour shortages in the district. So the statement of intent provides for CEDA to operate based on a deficit budget for the coming 3 years, with moderate to small deficits forecast to enable us to deliver the full service and the key performance markers that we are expected to do. We're also committed to reducing operating costs, especially in relation to CEDA's current office lease, which is due to end on the 30th of June 2024. CEDA wants to continue to work closely with MDC to bring the district's ambitions to fruition. And this has certainly been something that in my first 14 months in the job, I've worked hard on as CEO of CEDA to do. And I'll continue to lead our organisation to do that going through 2023-24. So happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Jerry. Thank you. There are 3 parts to the recommendations today. So let's deal with the first one, which is around the 6-monthly report. So I open that for questions and comments. One from me that's dear to my heart is you mentioned one of the priorities that Council MDC had for CEDA was around developing the visitor market, but more importantly, developing the country road. So do you have any specifics about work that's being done around that country road concept and growing that?
I might just ask Janet to pop up just to deal with that for us. It's best to have the expert in the room.
Thank you, and welcome, Janet. My apologies for not acknowledging you at the start. So Janet drives the visitor market side of what CEDA does.
Morena. So for the country road over the last, well, particularly 6 months, we've been developing, working with the rural community committees on refreshing the signage. So why we focus on signage, A, is for consistency in terms of regional brand across the region, but also to ensure that visitors and locals exploring the area have really good access to information on what else there is to see and do. So keeping them in the area longer, getting them to plan their repeat visits, spend more, stay more. So that's been a big focus. Pohongina Valley was the first one with a refresh in September last year. And we've been working with Rangawahia, Apiti, and a few of the key locations around there, such as the Rangawahia Scenic Reserve and Ian McKean Pinetum. As well as that, we've also been focusing on developing the capability of the visitor sector. So working with some of the key, I guess, tourism operators in the area to create packages that we can take to trade market to sell. So one of the recent successes was Makura Lodge in Awastone creating a 2 to 3 day package for people to cycle on the official scenic route and part of the New Zealand cycle trail from Manawatu right through down Pohongina and into Ashurst. So that was a really big success, and we've seen great results on that through our newzealand.com Tourism New Zealand partnership as well. So that sort of created a bit of a cycling cluster. Another cluster we're working on at the moment is reinvigorating the gardens businesses across the region, getting them more connected and helping them upskill. And then a focus we've had in the, I guess, rural tourism space, which is really at the core of the country road experience. We've identified a lot of gaps for product and accommodation, but also there's a huge amount of new product coming through on Airbnb. So we're wanting to make sure, again, that for the region's reputation and experience for visitors that are coming through, we're helping those providers upskill and value add what they're offering, but also encouraging farmers to consider diversification, whether it's partnering with another provider and doing farm tours or creating more accommodation options on their farm. So we've got a really exciting accelerator launching actually on the 8th of May. That's going out today. So we're essentially subsidising businesses and farmers to come along and do that. And that'll be a 6-month program to really I think lift up the calibre of what we do have, but also fill some of those gaps and look at some diversification options for the rural sector too. So hopefully that in a nutshell, and that's alongside our normal BAU of taking it to market, working closely with the New Zealand Motor Caravan Association, domestic travel agents, and the key leisure markets. So we're seeing huge numbers from Wellington still coming up. I know some of our uppity providers are getting a big chunk of the Wellington market, which is great because it's nice and easy, it's low impact, but it's really high spend and value. So we've still got all of our BAU channels focusing on our core markets.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, because we've always seen that there's huge potential to develop that country road. So it's great to hear some specifics around that. And I guess the Slicks and Stones cycling, you know, that's all part of this country road. Having that start in Apathy last weekend is a really good example of how this is working.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any Councillor Underwood?
I've got 3 questions about on the report. I don't know if you want me to say them all at once or.
Sure, just yep.
The first one on page 6, the funding of events through the Regional Events Fund. There were 12 events funded. Is that the ones that are funded? Is that decided by one person or?
The Regional Events Fund. Traditionally, we don't fund events. It's not a mandate, I guess, of CEDA, but as part of the COVID recovery and our partnership and work with MB, we were awarded a bucket of funds alongside our partners in Taranaki and Wanganui to help stimulate the events market with a view to driving more visitation to the area. So we set up a panel with our key events contacts at Manawatu District Council and Palmerston North City Council and ourselves, so that all applications were reviewed by those 3 parties collectively to look at the value that they could add. So it wasn't just us making that decision.
Great, thank you. And on the same page, 265 small and medium enterprises supported. Is there follow through to see how many of those enterprises still remain in business?
Yeah, look, those businesses come through in a number of ways. They either come through direct referrals through the Regional Business Partnership Program or through other activities through CEDA. So we follow those businesses up through the Regional Business Partnership Program with, they are surveyed, that is triggered through MB once they've received their service to tell us how good they think they've done. And then one of the things we see that tool is just one of the things in our kit A to help businesses. And then we want to be able to pathway those on to other things. So for instance, to get them to expand if they've got issues with finding staff, if they want to look at specific training programs, if they want to talk to somebody about potentially upscaling, getting Callaghan funding or whatever it is. So we do have different ways of moving those around the ecosystem inside CEDA to provide support for them. Anything to add there, Jackie?
Do you lose any of them? Because we're hearing, you know, that there is real difficult time for small and medium businesses. Are you finding that they are recovering or?
There's 2 conversations in there. One's the small to medium enterprises that come through the programs that we're looking at are usually in the startup or, you know, growth phase. And that's one of the reasons that they have to be in the growth phase to get into the Regional Business Partnership Program. We're not seeing a big drop off in those. We have seen through information provided through Stacey Bell through the city that the entire region, I think in the last year up till 2021, when the last statistics run, had a growth of 457 businesses overall, and some of those were in the region. What we're not clear on is how many of those are businesses that have either changed their name or that we've lost some and others have replaced them. So we haven't got that level of detail into that number yet.
Thank you. And I noticed also the toolkits that were developed. That's also on page 6, is it? Is there monitoring in place for how many people are using those? Those are online toolkits, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so part of, we had the initial workshops, one of which was at the Fielding Civic Centre here with I think 11 businesses, so nearly half of the overall attendance, but we've been monitoring the download, the engagement with the online toolkit as part of our rollout plan and outreach to businesses, and based on that we're doing another refresh, so keeping them really live, adding things that might not be as comprehensive as they currently are, and working with our team of business growth advisors to tailor them even further. So we'll see it as a live toolkit that will always be monitoring the the engagement with. Once it's downloaded, we can't track anything from there, but they're used in every one of our business engagements as part of the follow-up so that businesses have ongoing tools and it's not just a one-off engagement.
Thank you. Great, thank you. Councillor Ford.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your report. My comment is just wanting to keep primary production and agribusiness to the fore. And I look at the joint report of Bobby and Jerry on our page 85 or page 3 of the half-yearly report, and delighted to see on the middle column, this work is looking at, this is in relation to the food strategy, stage 2. This work is looking at the opportunities in food production, agri-tech and agribusiness, and producing a clear picture of what success looks like for the region. So thank you for that. I then go to the statement of expectations, page 2 or our page 126. And at the bottom there, a specific joint priority of MDC and PNCC is a development of a food strategy that addresses the total value chain from primary production, farmers and growers, to agribusiness clusters, example, rural banks, real estate, insurance, vets, sale yards, stock firms, grain and seed, merchants, agri-retail and rural tourism with a Manawatu district focus, through to agri-tech and science, including supporting the factory and Food HQ with its aspirations. And then when we get to the statement of intent, I'm perhaps struggling to see where that is followed through. So that's my question.
Thanks, Councillor. Look, it's a long list of ambitious targets for that food strategy in terms of what we're trying to, I guess, service, which is great. And as I said, this just previously to this meeting, I had a conversation with one of the regional people inside the food strategy discussion. So look, from our perspective, we think that one of the things in terms of the statement of intent, particularly the I guess our performance measures, is that we've tried to make those very broad when it relates to the food strategy for the simple reason that we don't have it finished yet. So it's going through the final stages of completion. The hope is to have it finished with the final input from about 4 other district stakeholders and getting it back to the consultants for early May. And we want to have it launched in June, I think, of this year would be a good target date. The key bit for that's going to be separate to the strategy. We want it to be, I guess, consciously separated from the strategy is the implementation plan, which currently has about 14 key outcomes. And there's a couple of bits of work to do. One is consultation with our Māori and Māori agribusiness partners to make sure that their views are very clearly inside the strategy. And then we'll be able to take those, I think the number about 14 or 15 key strategic imperatives and align those to then have more detail inside the statement of intent outcomes, but they won't be expressed in the current document because we don't know what they are yet.
Thank you. Councillor Belsky. Can you speak into your microphone, please?
I had a person approach me the other day about, now I haven't been there, so I could be completely wrong because she's in a retirement home, and that there's no sign or lookout sign at Stormy Point, like there's no big illustration of what people are looking at, like the Kimbolton lookout, which is a photo, and then arrow down to the Pacific, what you're looking at, and name like Ruapehu, Tongariro, and she was saying that it's one of the most unique lookouts in the world. She was saying about the landscape altitude and different layers that you look out onto is actually quite unique. So I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, if there is a big sign there with information sign photograph.
Yeah.
Is there?
There is an information sign there at the moment, but the one that was there, which I believe was a district council one from many years ago with showing the terraces, was so badly damaged that it's being replaced, but we're struggling to find, make sure the information is correct because there's no record of the sign and the graffiti was so bad that we can't make out what was on it. So you're right, it is really unique in terms of the geological terraces that are there, but the sign that is there does point towards online information about it for now. Yeah, so it's on our radar and something that ourselves and the district council are aware of.
Would something like the Waituna community be approached to look at it, or
So I think the point that Cedars May making, Councillor Belsky, is they are aware of it, and it's being looked at and addressed with MDC, how we get that updated and improved and replaced. Councillor Blackmore.
Oh, thank you. I've got a wee list. Being new, of course, there's a lot more to background to this that I don't know. So I might just start with probably the big one. What are the current challenges for CEDA for delivering the strategic objectives?
Yeah, look, are you talking about us as an organisation or for this?
Oh, and I suppose as a wider district as well.
Well, look, the biggest thing in terms of the district, I guess, is access to talent. You know, the thing we hear through all of our engagements with industry leaders, tertiary providers, you know, other organisations like the Chamber, and with all conversations I have with my top 100 businesses I talk to, is people. It's just trying to get enough people to be able to enact what they need to do. And I guess alongside that, whilst we've got an economy which I think is held up very, very well, because we've got a very, very broad economy where one of the things I love about being in this job is the district feeds the city and the city feeds the district. So there's a very symbiotic relationship between them. But there are some headwinds coming in the economy. And I think that's just going to be something that we have to face. You know, it's going to be a very difficult inward investment conversation over the next 12 to 18 months. And one of the things we're trying to look at as a potential for this is we may be in a position to attract businesses, particularly to the region, that are finding doing businesses where they currently are not affordable. So we're sort of trying to sort of see how we can leverage off those sorts of opportunities, but certainly people and the economic outlook are big challenges.
Okay. Another question was around the talent space. So it's really interesting that you're saying that's number one. There seems to be a lot of players in that area of trying to come up with ways to attract, train, build capability, all kind of seeming to be doing the same thing, maybe in conflict, I'm not sure. Do you have any comments about our opportunities there?
Yep. I've come from the tertiary sector, so I've got a good handle on that side of things. Look, I think one of the things that's really important in the talent space, it's not just about training, it's about a whole myriad of things. For instance, the Manawatu NZ website. One of the things we hear often, most recently with the health sector, is they've got their hands on being able to get the technical advice to people around coming as a doctor, a nurse, or an allied health member, but they want to be able to attract them to the region because it's got more to offer than other regions. So it's training, it's the opportunities to move to a region that's you know, easy to do business in. It's a place where they can see themselves bring up a family or whatever. So there's a whole combination of things. I think you've hit on a really good point, which I did mention in my report briefly, the oral report. We are very cognizant of, we don't want a whole bunch of people trying to do the same thing in a very, very small pond. So this morning, for instance, I've had conversations with Accelerate 25 around doing a spatial map around food production, you know, those sorts of things. There's no use 2 or 3 organisations doing it, so let's get them to do it and we can provide information into it. So I think it's a very, very well made point that we just don't want to be duplicating effort and sort of bubbling the water and, you know, and making it complicated.
Yeah, thank you. On page 9 of your report, there's something around business attraction, retention, expansion, and some survey or interview work. Is there any insights from that piece of work you can share?
Is that in the statement of intent?
No, that's in your report on page 9.
Don't know.
So just while Jerry skips to the page, I'll take my best guess, I think. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so with the development of that strategy, we set out to engage and interview with, I guess, key business leaders, stakeholders, sectors, to develop and ensure that, you know, we were tackling the right issues in the right way. And then as part of our rollout, we have ongoing engagement. Jerry's just mentioned his CEO top 100 list. We've also got across both the management team and the wider CEDA team targeted stakeholder lists, so that we're essentially always measuring the pulse of what's happening. And then we feed that back through our insights and analysis. And that sort of work feeds some of our targeted development work. So back to the talent conversation just prior, one of the things that we keep hearing around the attraction of talent is also the retention of talent and actually how they keep them in and grow those talent pathways. So that feeds into like the toolkit work or what our business growth advisors develop or roll out in a one-to-many approach. And we do also have an annual survey going out next month, to how many business leaders? The 3 yearly survey,
we're having we've done UMR research in the past, now primary purpose, doing some research for us with 300 businesses in the region just to help with that business sentiment, to understand where their pressure points are in a certain point of time. We've done that survey in 2016, 2019, so this is the third time. And what we're hoping that with the business traction, retention, expansion strategy is that in the future, our engagement with those, not just the top businesses in the region, and those businesses are actually determined by, it's not just turnover, it's not just staff, there's a whole numerous ways of looking at which businesses we should be talking to. But we're hoping that our discussions with those businesses will get to a point where we're receiving that information all the time, more regularly, that we can do our own maybe 6 monthly or annually business sentiment type surveys. It's just a way of us being better and better connected with our business community.
And just to add to that, one of the things we do get from those engagements, which I think we've noted in the report, is I guess identifying opportunities and risks for the region. So we included in those engagements are like commercial real estate players. So hearing which businesses might be considering leaving the region or other regions that we might be able to attract, which then again feeds into our inward investment work. So I guess it all sort of syncs. It's all interrelated, but it's really important that we have our finger on the pulse for those opportunities.
Yep. Two more. I think these will be quick ones. Sorry. The nature of your partnership with the factory and Sprout, what role does CEDA play there?
We fund them. So we, not all of them, but they're one of our third-party providers that we pay to have a contract with them.
Okay. Yeah. And the role CEDA plays in securing R&D funding in the area?
So we do that through Callaghan. We've got a person in our staff who's related to the Callaghan Institute and the funding they do through that. So that's the main one for that at this stage. Certainly I've got, having come from the tertiary sector, really interested to see how we can sort of lift that up inside the university and the Te Pukenga UCOL space as well. So we're always looking for new opportunities to get R&D happening in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
We know from recent experience that Callaghan's going through a little bit of a rethinking about what it does. So we just need to make sure that if there's any risk, that it's mitigated by spreading that in other ways. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Quarry.
Yes, thank you. The Manawatu district is not going to be a world-class tourist destination, but there's one activity I believe deserves as much recognition as possible, and that is the Kimbolton Sculpture Festival. I was up there last weekend and just blown away by the quality of the displays, the art that was produced there, and also the way in which the whole day was presented. And it'd be great if CEDA could promote that as much as possible on the New Zealand scene. It's fantastic.
I didn't see you there. I tried to buy the $4,500.
I was there early.
No, it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. It's my third time out there, and I just think it was amazing. The crowd was great. The quality of the event is always good, and I just love, if I can just say that, I love that rural bit that you get exposed to, and you have to walk through cow pats to get to the event. So I thought it was fantastic, and certainly fits within our ethos of how we spread the word around the region.
And well, it warms your feet up too. While we don't normally fund events, we were able to support that event through that regional events fund. But outside of that, we work with them every year. It's one of the key events we see on the annual calendar in terms of driving visitation to the region. And Tony and the team do a phenomenal job for a team of volunteers up there. So it's absolutely one we really support and are thrilled to have in the region.
Yeah, I think if more people outside of the district get to know about it as well, the quality is just there for.
Thank you. Just following up from Councillor Quarry, the discussion I've had with the Kimbolton Sculpture team, they do an awesome job, but they're a bunch of local volunteers. They do an outstanding job, supported by a whole lot of businesses and council and groups. The challenge and the question I've got is where is the support mechanism to help grow those businesses? They know it's got potential. We know it's got potential, but it's outside the workload of those current volunteers. So where in our region do we provide the support advice on how do you step that up and maybe bring in other groups to do add-on value activities to that event?
I think one thing in that space that's pretty exciting is you'll see shortly CEDA is about to go to market for 2 positions, which we're calling sector development positions, which are aligned to key sectors that the district and the city have identified. One of them is going to be in the destination space. So this to me starts off as a sector development discussion. I think that position, I'm beyond excited about these actually, because they bring the business attraction, retention, the skills and talent, and the inward investment possibilities into one sort of coordinated role that's by sector, not by pillar. So it has a more integrated approach. I think that's going to be one exciting step. I think what we can do as we roll those out and we keep evolving as an RTO, that we can also talk to these organisations about what we can do inside our constraints, which, the Regional Events Fund unfortunately ends in June. So we just need to think about other ways that we can leverage off opportunities, and that could be through finding people that can help to, be business partners with it or something. So I think these 2 new positions will help in that space.
Great, thank you. Councillor Short.
Thank you. Yes, the Sculpture Festival was fantastic. I didn't get to see much of it because I was a volunteer in a tent and we were so busy I didn't really get to have a look around. My question's in the talent and skills space, and you did actually touch on it a little bit. In the circles that I'm involved in, it's one of the biggest crises in New Zealand at the moment is the health workforce. I believe we're losing 30 doctors per month to overseas, and I'd hate to think how many nurses. It's the whole health sector. It's not just Te Whatu Ora. And I just wondered, I'm not expecting you to solve the national crisis, but what little bits can we do in our region, particularly thinking of, nursing at UCOL, those sorts of things. What sorts of conversations are happening? And also when you're trying to attract new businesses, we're particularly looking for staff that come with a wife as a nurse or something like that. So I just wondered if you had any comments around that.
Yeah, look, I think it's a really good point, and I think I did allude to it a little bit earlier, but happy to expand. Look, we've had some great conversations with Jeff Brown in his role, and it's all been around, we can do the attraction within, again, their constraints of what they can afford to pay compared to an overseas option. But he was really excited about the fact that when they go to market now, that they can have a meaningful link to the Manawatu NZ website, so that can actually show the people who are looking to come to the region with families and particularly children what's so fantastic about living in this region. That it's 20 minutes from Fielding into the hospital, or it's 6 minutes from Hokowhitu to the town centre or whatever when you forgot to take your kids lunch. So we do that sort of bit. We're really mindful of that's our part inside that conversation. And we have really close relationships with the tertiary sector. I think particularly Massey and Te Pukenga UCOL, which is where I've come from. In fact, we met with them yesterday to discuss our contract for next year. We were present at the opening of their new health building, which I think is fantastic and signals a great commitment to nursing training and medical imaging training in the city. We're always talking to them about how we can access the new government funding, which is related to where they see a need in terms of provision of labour workforce, that they can apply for funding. As I understand it, that's specific to that thing. So we can help through the Regional Skills Leadership Group in our work to inform what decisions they make in that space.
Thank you. So given that we've got 3 recommendations here, I'm going to take recommendation 1, which talks about the 6-month report, and then move on to the statement of intent. So now, Councillor Hadfield, you did have your hand raised for a question.
Well, yeah, just a general question rather than worry about which motion we're dealing with, Your Worship, if I can. I see 5,000 nurses left New Zealand for Australia in the last 12 months, was it? Pretty good. Bit of a hole for fill for EasyBuy going as well. It's a bit of a challenge for you to get that. But look, my question is around I note in the statement of expectation for the council, the point 3 is around the promotion of Manfield. So I notice in here the draft SOI promotion of Manfield as a conference and events venue option is not explicitly mentioned, and CEDA advises Manfield is promoted via the relationship with the Regional Conference Bureau that sits within the PNCC. So in simplistic terms, I read that and say actually PNCC are responsible for promoting Manfield. So I'm just actually wondering how that works.
I'll quickly start and then go to Janet. Easy buy, we're all over that. We've got a hit squad that's trying to work how we can make that happen. Look, just in terms of the Manfield from my end and the sector development end, and then I'll hand over to Janet. Look, we have a really good relationship with them. That for instance, they're inside the recently announced eTipu BOMA conference as one of the potential options for the delivery of that conference or that congress. That's up to BOMA to make the decision around that. We've talked to them about Kahu electric vehicles, potentially having a relationship with them. We've had a lead from NZTE around a farmer possibility, which is a regional thing, but could also have links in there. We've had a great relationship with the National Driver Trainer Centre, which relates to particularly Te Tanganui in terms of getting a really clear lead in on what we might need in terms of logistics and distribution training. I'll flick to Janet to talk about the relationship with the city.
Yep. So the year before last, when the funding reduction was made by the City Council, they took back a couple of key functions, one of which was the Conference Bureau. But so I guess we were really mindful of what that meant for the region in terms of not even just the facilities, but in terms of our offering as a region for a conference destination. Without the district, it's a bit flat. And in terms of, rural retreats and Makura Lodge, Orlando. So we work really closely with the City Council team in this space. The focus or the profile and promotion of the region as a conference destination is still done through our website. So we're working hand in hand with them. And actually, I think it was just last week we were talking about Makura Lodge and Manfield's listings on there, and I guess identifying some image gaps, things like that. So it is something we're really, I guess, on the ball with, and we have made those connections with the Manfield team, I think through a number of staff changes over there, keeping them in touch with the PNCC guys. So I guess we're the intermediary, but we're always scanning for those opportunities as well.
And the other piece of good news is that the next Manawatu Business Awards are coming out of the city and going to be held at Manfield.
Fantastic.
Which is great too. So we have got on to the SOI. So having done that, let's carry on with that. I was going to invite Lynn to come up, and so the statement of intent is a document that we work alongside CEDA, but as stakeholders, making sure that we get into the statement the expectations that we have as a district. So you've got the letter there. With the statement of intent, and then you've got the draft. Now I'm going to get Lynn to explain this, but the draft went to both councils for us to go through and make comment on, and Lynn and her team and I've had a meeting with them as well. We went through the document from a NDC perspective about, are we comfortable that it covers the expectations that we have, and the sheet that Lynn's handing out now are some of the comments and suggestions that we're wanting to put forward to CEDA or to put into the changes that we're looking to put into this SOI. So Lynn, cover what I've missed out.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. So I'll just ask everybody to look at page 77 of our report, and that has a table in there that is a combined table between ourselves and PNCC around our comments about the statement of intent, and that's the recommendation in this paper refers to that. But as Mayor Helen said, we have also had a meeting outside of that to have a look and go through line by line through the statement of intent, and we've got some other recommended changes as well. They're minor changes, I would suggest, but we'd just like to table those today. I'd also like to comment and congratulate CEDA on the statement of intent. It's significantly more consumable and easier to read, and the KPIs are more tangible than perhaps they have been in the past. So just appreciate that. So what we're asking you to do today is to look at the table that starts on page 77, and that shows our statement of expectations and how that is realised in the CEDA draft statement of intent, and also take into consideration the comments that both our council and Palmy have made, and accept those. And also for your information, there's also the changes that Helen, myself and Marie had gone through. And we're really interested today to hear if there's any other changes that you may wish to suggest. Of course, that they do need to be agreed with Palmy post this.
Thank you. So yeah, so MDC have the opportunity to put through suggestions, and then Palmy as the shareholder, we have to agree on those to put them forward. So I also want to commend CEDA on coming up with a statement that is much easier to understand. It identifies specifics of what we're wanting to achieve, and also congratulate our MDC team for we're now seeing that we're actually getting into this and identifying specifically from the district what our expected outcomes are from the work that CEDA does. And that is quite a significant change from previous. So thank you to everybody that's been involved. Are there any questions or comments around the statement of intent and any of the proposed changes? Councillor Hadfield.
Thanks, Your Worship. Look, just looking at this bit of paper that Lynn's just given us, the thing that I've honed in on is the KPI around growing the database of accommodation. In particular, those provide accommodation for hotels, motels, farm stays, bed and breakfast, home hosting, etc., which I think is actually significantly important to us, given that the majority of benefit from huge events at Menfield, i.e. the field days. I think it's about 89% of that benefit goes to the city simply because of accommodation. And one of the things that I think we could do better, or somebody could do better in the Manawatu region, is actually for people coming to the field days to have the option of staying in our turf through homestays, Airbnbs, whatever. And I think that's an opportunity that's been significantly lost. But anyhow, all I'm saying is that's really good that that's actually been identified. And I think for the district, that's significantly important. So good stuff.
Thank you, Lynn.
And thank you. And to that point, in the very bottom of page 78, we have a comment in there, which has been provided from Janet, which I very much appreciated while she had COVID, that explains some of the actions that CEDA are taking to be able to develop that. And Jerry wants to make a comment.
Sorry, just to clarify, the accommodation database is owned by the eyesight. It's not a CEDA activity, but we helped them, I think it was last year, wasn't it, Janet, to update that and then gifted it back to them as an updated database. So this fits squarely into the, we don't want to be duplicating a service that's offered elsewhere, but we can certainly keep in touch with the eyesight around making sure that's kept up to date.
Great, thank you. Councillor Underwood.
Our vision, there's 3 goals under there. I noticed that in the report, the 6-monthly report, and then in the statement of intent, they're in a different order. Was that by design or is that just random?
No, random, absolutely not. No, this is a CEDA document for our internal driving how we do things. It has gone through a refresh last year. which involved the CEDA board, the CEDA management team, and mana whenua. We've started off with Rangitaneo Manawatu at the moment. It's a living document. We're hoping to take that through into the iwi on this side as well, but those relationships aren't as well advanced as yet, and we're moving on those and we're making progress. At this point, I might just pause and introduce you to Tainui Woodmass behind me here, who's our new Māori relationship manager for CEDA. So look, these are all parts of the conversation of moving that forward. So this is a purposeful change in order. Some of the wording has changed to represent a more clear ambitions goal. One of the ones, for instance, we've removed out as being in the top 3 agri-food hubs in the world because we couldn't evidence it. So we're just being, that statement's been refreshed to being a leading agri-food hub. So yep, it's a purposeful reordering. Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Ford.
Yeah, thank you. And apologies for being pedantic. But firstly, I think this is a great document, and congratulations. I'm just coming back to the food strategy, and when we supported it at the beginning, it was very much about what's in it for the district. Well, that will come not in stage 1, but it'll come in stage 2 and onwards. And I'm talking about primary production and agri-business as opposed to more the agri-tech and research, etc. And so when I look at the page 79 and our suggested comments, which basically is no comment because it's all taken care of on page 10 of the statement of intent. My comment is that I think the statement of intent is still too generic, and it doesn't spell out the things that are important to the district, which are clearly shown on page 79 as part of the statement of expectation. And while it's a question of whether we need to be specific, as I'm suggesting, or not, or more generic, I get really worried that the agribusiness and primary production side is lost sight of from time to time, or there's potential for that. So I'd like to be specific.
Thank you. Lynn.
Just to explain that table, the no comment part was from Manawatu District Council and Palmy Council, because we felt that it was explained well, or that we had a reasonable understanding of what the outcome of the strategy would be. And so that's why we've not actually put any of our comment in there. But take your point, Michael, about being specific about agribusiness, agri-tech and food production for the food strategy.
So can we take?
That's my suggestion, yeah.
Thank you. So can we take from that that will be part of the suggested changes, comments to add into the draft?
Can I just ask a question around the process from this way forward, because this is obviously the first time without the joint strat committee. And I'm just wondering about how the resolutions between what the city and the district offer up as changes gets resolved. And I'm just hoping it will be a two-way conversation. I just flicked through, I saw something as you flick through the Ellen, which drew my attention to a reference to not having the 3 years of performance indicators in there. My understanding is that that's a requirement under the Local Government Act to do that. So we just need to make sure that we have, I think that's true, isn't it? So that we just have to make sure that we have conversations that make sure that the recommendations have been, it's a three-way conversation is what I'm asking for.
Yes.
Yep, cool.
Thank you. And just in relation to the fact that we don't have a joint strategic meeting structure with the city, there is a report coming back to both councils about how we're going to manage that going forward. Thank you. Any further questions, comments on the report, the statement of intent, or the recommended comments? If not, we can have a look at the recommendations on page 74. There are 3 of them. If I could have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Blackmore.
I move that the council receive the Central Economic Development Agency 6-month report, 1st of July to 31st of December 2022. Secondly, that the council receive the Central Economic Development Agency draft statement of intent 2023 to 24. And thirdly, that the council agree that the recommended comments on the draft statement of intent 2023 to 24 outlined in table 1 be advised to the Central Economic Development Agency.
Thank you, and I'm happy to second those. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motions are carried. Thank you. Really good discussion this morning. Thank you to CEDA, to the team for being here. And I think, as has been mentioned before, I think the work that CEDA does, we are now getting much more aligned, specifically around what the Manawatu district needs are. And that's come from a step-up approach from both MDC and CEDA. So I thank you for that, and look forward to what comes next. So thank you very much. We're going to adjourn now for morning tea. You're welcome to come and join us. Thank you.
Yeah, let's leave him alone. then. Have you had your, no, he's gone now, has he? Have you had your morning tea, Michael, have you?
I wasn't told how long morning tea was going to be, so it's kind of awkward, really.
Yeah, well, that'll be some learning for next time you host the meeting, Michael, won't it?
Absolutely.
Missed out on hot cross buns, Michael.
Oh, no, I love hot cross buns.
They were great.
I'm so pleased you enjoyed them, Fiona.
Yeah.
No problem at all. We are, I think we're in that process now, anyway, so we'll get through it. Yeah. I was just bringing it. I'll just say this one. So we need to touch base and decide on what other materials we need. And get that ball rolling. Yes. Definitely, yeah. So yes. Oh, that works well. And because it's large. Yeah. Recovering from
I wasn't too bad, to be honest. I'd say I built a business class. Just slightly over 7 days.
I was saying to Elsa, when Lynn gave us this,
Bring our meeting to order. Everyone's obviously not in a hurry. Right, thanks team. Let's reconvene our meeting.
Only get one.
Right, we're on item 11.4. This is our Lagoima reports for February, March. And so you have the table there. It is pretty straightforward. Thanks, Mel. Are there any questions or comments before we go to the motion? No? Okay, in that case, can I have a mover and a seconder, please, for the motion on page 173? Councillor Short.
Just checking I've got the right one. Yep. That the report detailing the requests for information, sorry, someone sending emails. Received under the Local Government Official Informations in Meetings Act 1987 from 15 February to 17 March 2023 be received.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor McFadden. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Right, that was easy,
Nice
wasn't
to
it?
see you anyway.
Thanks, Mel. Just shows what a great job you do. No questions. Right, we're on page 186, and this is the alteration of resolution in regards to CEDA, appointment of directors. Hand you over to Marie. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. This is a request for an alteration to resolution that was a paper at the 2nd of March meeting, the CEDA appointment of directors policy. We agreed in the meeting to include that any other agreed alterations be included in the resolution. And this was included in point 3, as you can see on page 186. But point 3 is about the mayor signing a resolution to alter the constitution for CEDA. So it's in the wrong point. And then, so it does need an alteration. And then following our meeting, because we're trying to mirror our papers with PNCC, as we heard, and when we were talking to CEDA just now, they actually, in their meeting, added like point 4, that the council delegate authority to the mayor in consultation with the CE of MDC to make any minor edits to the CEDA appointment of directors policy. And so just asking that we add that point to enable us to make any alterations and just make it clearer.
Thank you. So that's reasonably straightforward. Are there any questions or comments in relation to this recommendation? No? That being the case, do I have a mover and a seconder for those recommendations? I don't expect you to read them all out. Councillor Shaw.
Would you just like the ones with the alterations we did?
Thank you. Yes, we can take one and 2.
Okay, we'll take 1 and 2 is already adopted, and that item 3, that council delegate authority to the mayor to sign a special resolution to alter the Central Economic Development Agency constitution as stated and recommended 2 on behalf of Manawatu District Council as shareholder. And 4, that council delegate authority to the mayor in consultation with the chief executive of Manawatu District Council to make any minor edits to the Central Economic Development Agency Limited appointment of directors policy 2023.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor McFadden. Thank you. Any further comments? If not, I'll put the motions. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motions are carried. Thank you. Thanks, Marie. We go to page 189, adoption of remuneration and reimbursement for external committee members policy. And so this is presenting the policy for council to consider adopting. Welcome, Ash.
Thank you. I'll pretty much take it as read, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw.
Being on the district licensing committee, and I'm going to ask a different thing of Ash than what he's expecting. One of the members, one of the private members on the committee has been there right from the very beginning, which I can't remember how many years it would be now. They've never had a pay rise. And I see that it's controlled by legislation. I know this particular member actually wrote to Shane recently, and I don't know whether you've seen that, but is there anything we can do to make it more worthwhile for them?
Yeah, thanks for the question, and you're completely right. They haven't had a pay rise since 2014, I think it is. So what we've done, what this policy partly achieves is that it's subject to an annual review. So moving forwards, that won't reoccur. And as stated in the report, we can increase their fees by up to 3% every year. A year is the minimum amount of time that has to elapse before we can do that. That's what we've put in the policy. There are other options. You see in there that those increases can be higher, but they're subject to different approvals. It's been set by the fees framework. They're subject to minister approvals. So I suppose it's up to the council whether they consider that sufficient moving forwards. Yeah, if we want to increase the fee, then we could adopt the policy subject to.
And also, I believe our current commissioner, Rod Titcombe, has indicated that he's going to stand down later this year. So we will be looking for a new independent qualified person who's prepared to do it for $78 an hour.
Yes, actually all three, not counting yourself, the chair and the two other members, their tenures all run out around the same time. So yeah, there will be a bit of work.
Thank you. So this is all legislated what we have to follow. So regardless of what we may wish to do.
Yeah, that's right. So the actual practice of paying fees obviously predates this. This is just codifying it in a policy that will be reviewed on a regular basis. The fee increases for DLC in particular are legislated, well, not legislated, mandated by the fees framework. As for the Creative Communities Committee, we have a bit more leeway with what we do there, but we're just, in this policy, it's just saying what we're currently doing.
Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Clearly, we're restricted by the up to 3%, but I note here that the approval level, and I wonder if this is reflected in our policies, is either by the Chief Executive or the Governance Board. And actually, I actually wonder why this has actually come to council when the Chief Executive could have signed off at 3%. That's my view. The other thing is that actually, if we feel that this isn't actually quite appropriate, because quite frankly, a 3 to 5% increase to have to be approved by the responsible minister is like asking me to build a new cycleway across the Auckland Harbour. It's about as much use. So who do we advocate to actually say this actually doesn't, it's not fit for purpose?
Yeah, so we can. I mean, the fees framework, it mostly pertains to central government agencies. DLC is the only body that we've got that I can think of that it applies to, aside from a audit and risk, but that's covered by a separate independent contract that we've got. So, I mean, we can certainly write to our minister and express discontent with those figures. It's a little bit tricky because it's partly, well, it is our fault as a body that those fees for DLC haven't been increased in 9 years. So, I mean, if you wanted to increase the amount that we increase their fees by, we can still adopt the policy but make it subject to ex-minister approving an increase of X% for this year. So that's an option. The reason it's come to you rather than the Chief Executive is just because we're adopting the policy as a whole and that has to come to you. So we've just wrapped into the policy.
Thank you, but also noting that it's proposed to come out of existing budgets.
Yeah, that's right. The effect's it's pretty small increases though. I've written about that in the report. Yeah, small figures.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? No. So we have options of a recommendation on page 189. We either adopt it without the amendment or with the amendments, or with amendments that we may wish to make. Anyone keen to test the water with moving one of those? Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, look, I'll test it. And I'll move that the council adopts the remuneration and reimbursement for external committee members policy without amendment, noting that funding will be sourced from existing budgets. And I'll have a crack at that because I think the best thing for us to do long term is to actually advocate for what we think is a reasonable position to the drongos that make these rules.
Thank you. So we have a mover for the first
Can I just get
option.
clarification from Ash? What's the difference between the two?
So the first one is just if you're happy to accept it as I've written it, and as has been reviewed by LT. And the second is just if you want to make changes.
So if we went to the second one, we would have to come up with what amendments we would want to add to it.
I just thought I'd give you the option.
Or could we put in an additional point saying that we would like to advocate that these get reviewed at the central government level?
I'm happy to do that as a staff action. I don't think that needs to be a part. I mean, you can add it, it's up to you, but I'm happy to just do that independent of the recommendation.
So we have a mover for the without amendment. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor McFadden, thank you. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. I think the point, Councillor Short, that you make around advocating, I think that's something that council can take on board as well.
Is that worth a remit at LGNZ? It's mine, but
Assuming we're still there.
Is this something potentially something useful that local government New Zealand could take up, Your Worship?
That's what Councillor Short is suggesting, and I'm just writing that down because we do have to look at what remits we might take.
Because my concern is that if, I'm not sure if all councils are on the same cycle, are they?
I would assume so. They're all subject to that 5-year
For those
term.
that have been on their long term and there's no increase in remuneration, and it's a little bit of a tie, this committee, usually once a month, but you've got pre-reading to do, etc. Those that are there and have been there for a while might decide, blow it and give it up. Then you'll be looking for new ones.
So I've taken the notes that we need to advocate, and the question will follow up is how do we do that advocating? Do we do it on our own, or does it fit within the remit criteria to go to LGNZ, and on the basis that we would have to get other councils to back us before we can put that remit forward?
Because also the mileage rate in there, and actually I didn't look at the creative communities ones, is not, it's not far away from, but it's not currently what's being paid by what I think IRD are recommending. Is it 83 cents a kilometre?
Yeah, so the actual,
This is less.
no, the actual policy has it tied to what the existing rate is. So what I've written in the report is the rate that they're currently being paid. But once the policy is adopted, we'll move to that 83 cents, which is what the REM Authority and IRD both stipulate.
Okay, so having moved that motion and taken the notes regards to where we go next with it, let's move on. So we go to item 13, which is the public excluded, and I'm happy to move that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, namely the confirmation of minutes, the receipt of minutes, tender award recommendation, and the contract award for solid waste disposal. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor McFadden, thank you. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you.